I'd like to welcome everyone to the Rules Committee meeting for October. Boy, it's a fast month. Call this meeting to order at 1:02. Councillor Buzzard, would you please bless the meeting?
Thank you, sir. Dear Heavenly Father, we gather here today to take the business of the Cherokee Nation upon us. We ask that you keep your hand upon us. Help us to make the right decisions for our tribal people. We also ask you to bless our troops that are in harm's way, that are stationed abroad, those are in the United States. We thank you for our traveling grace in here, and we ask you to give us safe travels back to our destinations tonight. We ask all this in Christ's name. Amen. Amen.
Keep our good friend E.O. Smith in your prayers, too. Is he doing better? Okay. This time, Shelley, would you please do roll call?
Yes, sir. Joe Bird.
Ani?
Kanan Duncan.
Ani.
Keith Austin.
Here.
Harley Buzzard. Julia Coates.
Here.
Sean Crittenden.
Ani.
Joe Deere.
Ani.
Mike Dobbins.
Here.
Rex Jordan.
Here.
Daryl Legg.
Here.
Wes Snowfire.
Ani.
Dora Petzkowski. Here. Mike Shambaugh.
Here.
Mary Bakershaw.
Ani.
Gio Smith. Denise Taylor. Here. Victoria Vasquez.
Ani.
We have a quorum.
Okay. At this time, I'd entertain approval of the minutes.
So moved.
Got a motion
Second.
and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Drop down to reports. Our Marshal Shannon Buell.
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
Besides the general reports for the month, one of my officers, Kyle Shambaugh, is in FLETC in Artesia, New Mexico. It's a 4-month academy there. It's paramilitaristic. That means they march, they wear uniforms, they do push-ups, they have to clean their room, they have room inspections, and it lasts for 4 months. They usually can't even leave the complex site for the first 3 weeks. And then after that, they can only leave Friday afternoons and come back Sunday. So it's very restricted and regulated. It's good to know that he's doing well. It's been kind of a pride thing for the Marshal Service for years that we send good people to the academy. And while they're at the academy, they do good things. So we look forward to the good things that Kyle will be doing while he's there and when he comes home. Other than that, those of you might be aware, we had a officer-involved shooting Friday night late up in Twin Oaks. 2 marshals were involved in that. Both marshals are safe. We have a pretty stringent policy and procedure on how to handle those things, and we've implemented that. So if you would keep those 2 marshals in your prayers, because they're going through stuff with that right now. So is there any questions?
Any questions for our Marshal? We just appreciate all that you guys do. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, Councillor Duncan.
I just want to publicly thank you. We had, all the flooding over there that's going on pretty much everywhere. I had a lady who needed to get home to her kids, and one of the kids was disabled, and she'd been away from them all night, and your marshals come out and helped her and took care of the situation, so I appreciate you guys.
Well, thank you.
Anybody else? Good report.
Thank you.
Office of the Attorney General, Christy Nemo.
Good afternoon. Happy Halloween. I'm really disappointed no one wore a costume today. Got a couple of things. On Monday, the AG's office accompanied the chief to the tribal meeting with AG Hunter that I'm sure everyone has seen in the news. We listened to the state's presentation / proposal, and tribal leadership is discussing next steps. There was a press release by both the state as well as the Oklahoma Indian Gaming Association, and it's an ongoing issue. So we're working on it. We did file, and I know that you all received a copy, a petition for rehearing en banc in the UKB land into trust case. They will respond to that, and then the court will decide whether or not they're going to rehear it. No new news in Murphy. It has still not been listed for, the court has said they're going to hear argument on it again, but they have not set a date. The December calendar has already been released, so it will be at least February before it's heard. There is a pro se, which means I filed it without an attorney, petition to the U.S. Supreme Court, someone who was convicted in a crime in Wagner County, making Murphy arguments, and the court has relisted it 3 times, and that means they haven't made a decision on whether or not they're going to hear it, but they are still considering it. So instead of denying it or granting it, they just keep putting it back on their conference schedule to talk about. There's a lot of speculation as to why the court may be looking to take another case like that, particularly because one of the 9 Supreme Court justices, Justice Gorsuch, has recused in the Murphy case because he was at the 10th Circuit. And speculation is that there may be a 4-4 split, and the court may be looking for a similar case where they could get a 5-4 decision. Again, that's what everybody's talking about. We don't really know anything on that, but there is another case with the same reservation, Creek Nation reservation boundaries issue floating around at the Supreme Court. I think it will be the week after next before they conference again, so before we know what, if anything, they're going to do with that case. In our Fifth Circuit ICWA case, the plaintiffs, which were the 3 states and the 3 individuals, we won that case. They have filed motion for rehearing en banc, asking the entire court to rehear that case. We filed our objection to that, and we are now just waiting for a decision on the court as to whether or not they're going to rehear that. And briefly on the opioid, I know there's been lots of news articles about settlements. There is no settlement at this time with anyone. There are proposed settlements. States are fighting amongst themselves whether or not they want to be included in settlement. Those talks are ongoing, but there is no global settlement at this point, and I don't know whether or not there will be. We continue to be engaged in that, but there's no major news to report on that, although there's a lot of news coverage of it. I don't think that there will be any type of global settlement that will settle all of the claims anytime soon, but we remain hopeful to eventually get there on that. So that's what I have to report, and I'll take any questions that you have.
Any questions for, yes, Councilor Coates?
Thank you. Hi. I was wondering, can you comment? I've heard some things about the Murphy case and the impact that a possible loss would have or could have on tribes across the country in terms of their reservation boundaries. Can you extrapolate or comment on that potential loss?
I think that is not true. This case specifically only affects the Creek Nation because of the way that the state of Oklahoma became a state in regards to the 5 tribes. There's at least an argument that a decision as to the Creek could or would affect the other 4 of the 5 civilized tribes. But the argument as to whether or not the formation of the state of Oklahoma disestablished the Creek Nation boundaries, I think, is very specific to the Creek Nation and the state of Oklahoma, and absent some huge change on how the Supreme Court has dealt with this case. I mean, they are looking at the facts of the state of Oklahoma and the Creek Nation to determine whether or not Creek Nation has a reservation, and I think it's unlikely that win or lose, that it could even arguably affect anything but the 5 tribes. It could affect us, but I don't think it has any nationwide reservation boundaries effect.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Ben?
The ad that's being run for the unification of Oklahoma and the tribes and what we contribute, whoever put that together is very well done.
Hey, they are great, aren't they?
They really are. I mean, it doesn't really point anybody out, any tribe. It's just a unity PR. And that's something I think we need to continue to run.
And that
even
is,
after all of this is over.
I don't know all the details, but that is a joint effort by
Yes.
tribes. There are
Very
multiple
well
tribes
done.
involved in
Very
that.
professional.
They're really great.
Yes. All right. Good report.
Thank you.
Wynn Terrapin, FOIA.
Good afternoon.
Hey, Gwen.
Nice looking scarf.
Thank you. I can't remember where I got that. To date, we've got 37 total requests. 18 of those are FOIAs and 19 are GRAs. We have 2 outstanding on the FOIAs. We've updated the website, and we've also put Attorney General Hill on the website now, so for the Attorney General's website. But other than that, that's all that I have, except on a personal note. I would like to say thank you to the chief and to our tribal council. This past week, we had the Indian National Finals Rodeo out in Las Vegas, and I'm the president for Region 8, which is Oklahoma. And, excuse me, we had 3 world champions come from our region, and 2 of those are Cherokee citizens. So we are very, very proud of them. And they also wanted me to tell you thank you, and thank you to the chief for the monetary support and for the ongoing support during the year for our rodeos. So thank you very much.
Could you give names?
I will. The 2 Cherokee citizens were Jaco Roper and Quentin Inman. So we're very proud of them. We're going to be doing a story on them, and we're hoping to be able to bring them before the council at some point so that they can personally say thank you.
Good. Any questions for Gwen? Good report.
Thank you.
Election Commission, Marcus Spears, one of our favorite people.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Happy Halloween. It's also my daughter's birthday, so.
Well, how about that?
The Election Commission is doing good. We're enjoying working normal business hours, and that's good. And
What's that like?
yeah. We're also enjoying getting back into the community, getting back to the community meetings. It's good to see you guys, and looking forward to see the rest of you guys as the meetings continue. As of October 31st, we had 74,644 total registered voters. That's 42,672 in district and 31,972 at large. On the business of election reform, I just learned today from council attorney, Mr. Brown, that whenever he had requested our recommendations and we sent it over, he didn't happen to get those in that email. So I talked to him just now, and I will hand deliver those to him this afternoon. And like I said, I wasn't really sure that he didn't receive those. So, but anyway, and I'll take any questions.
Any questions for the Election Commission here?
Marcus, could you please repeat how many at large you had?
Yes, absolutely. Right. As of October the 31st, it was 31,972. So I'm thinking we're probably almost over 32,000 by now, being the end of the month. Yes, ma'am.
Anybody else? Good report. Keep
Thank
up
you.
the good work.
Thank you.
Tax Commission, Sharon Swepston, lady in red. Afternoon.
I believe you have my report. I'll try to address any questions that you might have.
Any questions for our Tax Commission? Yes, Councilor Crittenden.
And I think I say this a lot, but Sharon, I appreciate you always
You're welcome.
helping me out on my questions and always answering the phone, sweet lady, and I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the information. Been kind of pestering you about a different tag agency there in Adair County, and thank you for looking at some of those numbers. And there's some pretty important people in here. Kanan had mentioned this before. We've got a empty building with lots of parking by a couple good eating places right there in town. You and I talked about
Yep.
that, but the old Walmart building, I don't know what intentions there are for that, not this C&B thing. But if we can maybe look and see, that's one idea for a location like we talked. But thank you for always answering old questions, Sharon.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Good. Anybody else? Good report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Self-governance, Karen Ketcher.
Good afternoon. I think you have my report. Is there any, if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
What's going on in self-governance?
A little bit of everything. We've got our 2020 compact signed and back. I mean, our reprogramming. We've got it back and it's signed, so we're ready to go. In the last, and it's in my report here, in the last self-governance advisory committee meeting that we had, of course, it's IHS and DOI both, but IHS requested and received, because we're under a continuing resolution, they requested and did receive authority, special authority to fund our health programs, fully funded, so we're not working under the continuing resolution dollars. So
Good.
that we're going to get all of that at one time. DOI did not request it, so we won't get that. It'll be coming in increments, continuing resolution increments. But it's we're working. We've got several things that we're working on. 105L leases is one, and that's a major issue. They're going to, I think, discuss it at the Tribal Interior Budget Committee meeting, which is next the week of the 11th. So that's on the agenda, so that's going to be one of the things that they talk about, and that's the leasing program. When we entered into self-governance many years ago, we didn't get funding for the space costs that those federal programs occupy. We've now submitted the leases for IHS, but we have not yet for DOI, and they're going to discuss that at the meeting. We're a finance, between me and finance and some of the programs, we're already looking at the documentation to see how much that would be, but we have not received space cost on our federal programs. So that's kind of a major thing that we're working on right now.
Chief of Staff, you're aware of all that?
Sure.
Good. Any questions? Self-governance? Yes, Councillor Buzzard.
I know there was some talk about a year or so ago, Karen, about those roads up here at Sequoia High School, about getting them on the IR system. Has that ever happened?
No, it hasn't.
It hasn't, okay.
No. I think, and every time I'm continually asking about it, but I have not got a response yet, and I don't know if we'll get one.
Okay. And the other question,
there was an appeal on it, but that appeal hasn't.
Yeah, I knew we appealed the decision on that. The other question is, I've talked about the pine trees up in Kenwood for a long time. I'm wondering about doing a compact. Can we compact part of the DOI for that type of operations to administer those programs? Now, I know the environmental still has to go through DOI, but it seems to me like what the problem is, the pine, to get them thinned out, is held up through DOI because of the environmental. Now, I know the roads program has changed some stuff on environmental issues. I don't know why, and that was through federal highway. I think we need to look a little bit deeper and see if we can't compact those.
I think that Pat can tell you a little bit more about that.
Okay.
And I know that we did receive some USDA funds to contract with them to do that. Chad May, and so they are working on that right now. I haven't been involved since we got
it's just
the contract.
I have asked about it probably for 5, 6, 8, 10 years, and we just haven't made any headway on it. I understand we are working on it. That's what she reported the last time.
And we've been working on it, for many months. And where we're at now is we have a disagreement between the two government agencies about what's the appropriate level of environmental review, and unfortunately it hasn't kind of gotten out of this logjam that it's in. We're still pushing to get a hold of some of these resources to engage in that work, but we are somewhat at the mercy of, for the federal funding purposes, for those two agencies to resolve their disagreements. So we are pushing them, but they're not moving as fast as certainly as we would like them to.
Yeah. And I know what you're facing with, because we've faced that in the road program for years and years, and finally moved that to federal highway, and the environmental system has got a lot easier since then. And the reason I keep bringing this up is everybody knows what kind of condition California is in now. Of course, we don't have the land and the trees like California, but we still have 1,200 acres of pine. If we ever get a fire in there, it's going to destroy everything that we've ever raised for the last 20 years. Whether that makes any difference or not to them, it doesn't seem like it, but That's my concern. If we get a windstorm down there and get a spark in those trees, it'll burn everything we've ever got up. I don't know. Just keep working on it, Chad, that's all I can say.
I think that's a valid concern, and we're certainly pushing them as hard as we can, and hopefully we'll have a better sense soon of if this disagreement between those two agencies can be resolved and what the time frame will be for actually engaging in projects on that. So I'll certainly keep you posted.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you, Karen. Thanks, sir.
Okay. Anybody else? Karen, I have one question, and while the chief and the chief of staff is here, would you look at doing some type of initiative, what the mechanism would be to do a joint venture with BIE? Tara Sweeney gave a report at NCAI. It said all BIE schools that are over 100 years old qualified. And when you drive in Sequoia campus, I think it says 1876. And if that's something that we would need to look at, then maybe you can get with the chief or chief of staff. I'd sure like to have a resolution or something for our chief to look into that. That might be something that would be helpful if it had some of the benefits as our joint venture with IHS.
Are you talking, did she refer to the Gila River school that has been,
I think
that they
so.
constructed? That's a part of the 105L lease issue.
Okay.
That's how they funded that school.
Okay. Chief, is that something that you wouldn't mind looking into?
It's great, and we should update council on that. I know more than a year ago, I think Chief Baker had given some testimony to that effect, and I think it's sort of still in the mix on things we're working on, but we can give you an update and push that harder.
Thank you, appreciate it. Okay, thank you, Karen.
Is that it?
Yes. Game Commission, Jamie Hummingbird.
Speaker and Council, if I may, I would like to introduce Ms. Janice Walters Purcell as our new Executive Director in the Gaming Commission. If you recall, during the budget process, that was one of those positions that were added during the budget hearings, and so she's probably not new to anybody. She's been around the Cherokee Nation for quite some time, so I would like to introduce Ms. Janice Walters Purcell as our Executive Director of Gaming.
Thank you, Sean.
She was a former gaming commission, right?
Correct.
Yes, okay, all right.
And I would like to say thank you, and I hope everyone is having a very good day today. There was a report already submitted. Did anyone have any questions on that? I also submitted a report yesterday that will be in the packet for next month, and it kind of goes into a little bit more detail about what exactly we as a gaming commission do. So to explain licensing and how the federal requirement for that is, what is licensing. So I kind of wanted to break it up and let y'all know exactly what we do. We also are having a gaming commission meeting on November 8th at the Chota House. Actually, it's the Chota Conference Room, I'm sorry. I've been in Tahlequah so long, I've gotten it embedded in my mind about the Chota House. Anyway, it's November 8th. It starts at 9:30. We will be there, the Gaming Commission will be there, C&E, whose operations will be there, and they can answer any questions, and you can sit in on the commission meeting.
Okay. Anybody? Yes, Councilor Coates?
Hi. This may be a really stupid question, but I always tell my students, don't be afraid to ask stupid questions. Can you give me some, because I'm a little confused. I guess I'm not understanding what sort of the org chart is between your title as Executive Director of Gaming and the Gaming Commission. Can you explain the relationship, the hierarchy, anything about it?
Of course, with the Gaming Commission, the chief makes appointments to that. You guys confirm those. Previously, we had a director's level position only, and we felt it needed the responsibility needed to be risen to the level of executive director, and that's why we submitted that in the budget. So hierarchy-wise, Janice would be the executive director over the daily operations of the gaming.
Of the commission?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. But
So-
she takes the direction, and the Gaming Commission has the oversight based on, of course, a lot of recommendations, finding and suggestions from the Gaming Commission staff and the executive director.
She
is
is
this
no
a
longer
position-
on the gaming commission.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay, okay,
sorry?
that clarifies. She's no longer on the
Okay,
gaming.
that
Yeah,
was
sorry,
my
I-
question too. That was-
Yeah.
Okay, that clarifies a little bit.
So
That's what I
we
wasn't
have a
understanding.
vacancy
Okay.
on that board, which you guys will, or that commission that you guys will take into consideration later on today with some nominations as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, Councillor Crittenden.
Nice to meet you, ma'am. Congratulations. Don't know much about the hierarchy like was mentioned, but I was always impressed with the folks, previously. Are we utilizing their expertise as well?
Absolutely.
Those players.
Those team members that have been there for years are still there, and valuable resource, and
I think
will
everybody
continue.
here would agree that there were some professional reports and
Yes.
always kept us on the up and up, and I think that's a wise move to utilize those folks that were there, and again, congratulations,
Thank
man.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Councillor Buzzard?
I just want to talk about, Jamie Hummingbird has been on there for 18 or 20 years. Now, if you look at what's happening in this administration, we have a director with Jamie Hummingbird, and we have somebody else coming in to take that position. If you look at our C&E board, same thing happened there. We have a former chief going in there, now he's over the Gaming Commission. What's going on here with the tribe? Are we eliminating everybody that ever worked here before, then putting somebody else in those positions, which have run perfectly well for the last 20 years? The other thing that kind of gets me, lawyers are good. I know Janice Purcell is an attorney. If you look at all the appointments that's been made, I'll say about 75% have been lawyers. There's nothing against lawyers. Lawyers, we need them. But I'm not sure it's exactly good for everybody to have all the lawyers in one place at one time, because we get so many opinions from the lawyers as it is now. But anyway, Janice, I think you'll do a good job in there.
Thank you.
I've known you for a while, so I think you'll do a good job. But this concerns me. I don't know if it concerns anybody else on the council or not, but it concerns me. And I just want to say that for the fact today and on the record. Thank you, sir.
Anybody else?
Still here.
Yeah,
Jamie is
would,
still,
yeah, one thing I would like to address is Jamie is still there, and that's in reference, I didn't name anybody specifically, but in reference to what Councillor Crittenden had asked, he is still a very valuable resource and member of that team, and we expect to have great things come from him for years to come.
Just to follow up. And the other thing that I want to say is we're elected for the people of the Cherokee Nation. These positions have got to cost money. This position costs us money, and the person we put in charge of C&B, or they did, that's got to cost money. Now, we got people out there that need housing, we need people that got driveway problems, they need roads, they need water lines, they need wells. What kind of money are we talking about here? I'm not asking for the salaries of those people, but my goodness alive, we're sitting here with dollars that needs to be spent on our citizens. We've had organizations that have ran really, really well for 15 or 20 years. Then we go and put people in these positions. I don't know what the salaries is, but I'll guarantee you they're not salaries that our citizens that work out in the public make. Thanks, sir.
Chief, did you want to?
Well, I have great respect for the councilman. And with respect, let me say this. Even in the time, Councilman, when you and I started on the council, the gaming operation has grown exponentially. I don't think anyone would argue with that basic fact. The Gaming Commission, staff-wise, has grown. I think organizationally, we have to grow and keep up with the size and complexity of our gaming regulations. So it does make sense that this department, on par with other departments, would have an executive director level. So that's the reason. And that's the reason that in the budget that we presented to this council, that was passed unanimously, we included funding for this new position. And we were completely upfront about that, as we should be. And so I think this is in the best interest of the Cherokee Nation, and I think it will take gaming operations to stay on par with the expansion of our gaming operations. So I've got great respect for points that you make about how well things have run, but I do think we have to be mindful about the exponential growth of gaming and the need to keep the department on par with other departments that our executive director level. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Councilor No Fire.
Yeah, just to kind of clarify, I know that we had a budget, our budget that was in that we passed, it was for several $100,000 for that, for a position that was created in the gaming commission. And I'm with you, Harley, on the fact that we have a great thing, and I'm with you, Chief, that we need to grow it. I am for one that we grow with from within. That's just from where I take on it. And I noticed that we had stated that we didn't have any changes yet, but I do know that we did move a manager already out of that position from the gaming commission. But that's just all I kind of wanted to say and put on record, that we've already made some changes in the gaming commission. So, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Yes, Secretary?
We'd like to ask one, hopefully improvement that we can make. Janice gives a report for regulatory. Chuck Garrett gives a report for operational. Chuck Garrett gives his report in the next meeting. A lot of questions that appeared to be coming to regulatory are operational. So we wondered if this committee would be willing, along with you, Speaker, to allow regulatory's report to come just before operational's report in the next meeting, if that would be a possibility. Then they, working one right after another, should be able to get all of your questions answered for gaming, whether it be regulatory or operational. Would that be a possibility that you all would allow her to move to the next meeting, starting with November?
I see no problem with that, because you do have two different operations there. I mean, that's up to the committee. If you guys choose to, I'd be willing to go along with it.
Personally, I think it's a better fit to have it in E&F than to have it under rules, but
If that would be a possibility, then we could start that in November. And then any questions you have on gaming, we'll have both people on hand at the same time to give you those answers. Okay. All right. Maybe Shelley will help us with that then. We don't want to take a vote or anything, but I'm hearing from the two chairs of both committees and seem to see a lot of nodding of approval, so we'll work on that for next month.
I've got a comment here, Councillor Shimmo.
I think it's a good idea, personally. I mean, and I think that anytime there's change, you know, we can respond differently. Everybody thinks differently of change, but the end result is you know, I think this administration made change for the better. You know, they've showed that they do care and they do want to move forward. And I think as a councilman, I think that's very important for us, whether it's through our gaming, you know, our casino. I mean, we always strive to better ourselves. And I think this is just another way that we strive to better ourselves. Yes, it may cost a little bit of money, but yes, there is a need to do it. And it's just like looking to have both of our reports come start next month at the same time, so it won't be split up. And you know, if one question goes to one, and maybe you know, we may not be asking the right person the right question. So you know, it does make sense to do that. But also, I think this is just another way that we move forward as a nation. We better ourselves, and you know, I appreciate the things that we do to better ourselves, and I think this is just something we've done to better ourselves.
Thank you all.
We will get with Shelley,
Yes,
and we'll
yes, sir.
communicate with you on that, okay?
Thank you very much.
All right. Human Resources?
Thank you.
Yes. Jason Morton?
Good afternoon.
Afternoon.
In addition to the written report,
Something that's happening on a national level that we're looking at is, you might have read where they're increasing the threshold amount for overtime for the nation. They moved it up from a base of 23,700 to 35,500. So basically, it will not impact anyone who's already at an hourly rate, but they're taking a look at people who make under that amount that have a salary. This is something that's been ongoing, and we've been watching it a few years. During the Obama administration, they had they did a rule, and it's been a while, and they put the threshold at somewhere in the 40s. And there was some litigation and a lot of discussion on that. They changed administration, so they changed the rule. So this is something we've been watching 4 or 5 years. Just thought I'd let you know if there's any questions. We're aware of it, and we're working on it. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Morton here? Yes, everybody's pretty satisfied.
Thank you very much.
Old business, none pending, new business. Councillor Taylor, would you please take that?
This is a resolution confirming the reappointment of John Sparks as a member of the Cherokee Nation Gaming Commission. I put that in the form of a motion. Second.
Got a motion and a second, and John is here. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the ayes have it.
A long drive.
It is
I
good.
do-
It
I
is
do
good.
have
It is good that you came here because, to me, that tells us you take this position seriously.
Afraid to speak. We're kind of
I've already voted.
Okay.
Can I have a
right
comment?
direction. Thank you all. I appreciate it. Always good to see you. If you have any questions,
Councillor Taylor.
always make myself available.
I just will say I have attended a fair number of gaming commission meetings. John is the chairman of that board, and he's always been very willing to answer my questions, take a little extra time with me, and I do appreciate it.
Okay. Good.
Have a nice day. Thank you again.
Resolution next. Councillor Duncan, would you take that?
Yeah, this is a resolution confirming the appointment of Shana Baker as member of the Cherokee Nation Gaming Commission. I put that in form of a motion.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion?
There's an error in this.
There's an error.
On the 1, 2, 3, on the fourth whereas.
It also John Sparks.
Yes. It's Scrivener's error, I'll correct it.
Okay.
Gotta wait another month.
So we got a motion with the correction. Okay. All right.
And that continues in the be it resolved
Yeah,
line.
in the be it resolved part, I noticed that.
They were trying to get John in there somehow. weren't they?
He didn't pass the first one.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, Councillor No Fire. Jeff.
Shana, good to see you. Glad we had a conversation on the phone some time back whenever this was coming up. I know you've had a lengthy legal career, and it's all good. I know we talked about some gambling experience, some sort of knowledge on our gaming compliance, any kind of information. You haven't really been involved in gaming at all, correct?
That is correct, sir.
Okay, that's kind of something that to me is a very, very important thing. That's our regulatory body. Once we just got through talking earlier, it is the ones that make law, and we've got to hold ourselves to a higher standard above the Federal Indian Gaming Act. So that's kind of where I'm stuck at on it. And I know we continue to talk even a little bit more. And I know you have a love for trying to get involved in with Cherokee Nation. Have you involved yourself with a lot of Cherokees through your legal practices?
No, my legal practice is primarily in Tulsa.
You're right.
So I am a member of the Cherokee Nation Bar Association. So I did join that back in
Right.
2017, yeah, last year. So, no, I have not been involved in gaming. I have been reading online. I've been reading the regs. I've been in communication with individuals who have updated me that we have some existing regulations that have gone before the ABA. Those have been circulated and tabled, and we're awaiting comments on those and so forth. So I've tried to get as up to speed as I can to begin, hopefully, my appointment to the Gaming Commission. But I have not been involved in gaming in the past.
So what makes you think you could be capable of being a gaming commission board member?
Well, the majority of the responsibilities that are handed down to the Gaming Commission are based on legal framework. So they're based on federal, state, and obviously Cherokee Nation regulations. And so as a result of a lot of that legal training, if you will, I have the foundation to read those laws and to interpret them and then to apply them as well. So I think that my formal training as well as my professional experience will lend itself quite well to the Gaming Commission.
And I'm sure it could possibly be that way. I still kind of reiterate to that experience of already having it to get there. And I know we had conversations about how, you reached out to some people, one being, at the time it was nominee chief now, Chuck Hoskins, and you didn't reach out to any other nominees? You didn't reach out to former Councillor David Walkenstick or former Councillor Dick Lay, that your interests were working?
Correct. I think the question that we had on the telephone, just to sort of clarify, was whether or not in order for my future service at the time then, whether or not I reached out to any of the chief candidates to express an interest to serve in the future. And I did reach out, and I told the former administration that, basically to back it all up to the Supreme Court nomination last year, some of the comments that I received and questions that I received basically said that, it would serve me well to perhaps come back and serve in a different position first or a different capacity first before going straight to the Supreme Court. So I visited with the former administration, and as part of that, now Chief Hoskin was Secretary of State. And I did express an interest that I did want to serve, and I wanted to heed the council's advice. And Councillor Lay, in particular, stated, that I should serve in another capacity first. And so I really heeded that and asked if I could come back.
Okay, so you reached out to a chief candidate, only one in particular, and you also donated to one specific chief candidate, correct?
That is correct, yes.
And doing so, it was also in conversation to possible employment.
No, that's incorrect.
Okay,
No.
so they're separate conversations.
Completely separate conversations.
Good, correct.
Yes.
That's just kind of what I was asking about, because there's an unqualification that I'm having trouble with without any compliance or gaming commission experience. But you were a donation to, and by all rights you have the right to do that, donating to a campaign, and of course previously stated you had talked to them about an employment opportunity. I kind of struggle with that because it looks as though we don't have a qualification that's, in my purview, necessary, which is some gaming experience. But it could look as though, and I'm just saying, it could look as though someone is overshadowing that with contributions made in a political campaign. And that's kind of how I would see it, and my constituents could see it as being there, is that we're making exceptions to someone's qualifications based off of potential previous donations to someone's campaign. And I don't want to try to...
Well, what we need to do is we need to stick with the facts.
Right.
Not on opinion here.
Okay.
So.
Well, and then that's what I mean. I think you're highly qualified from a legal aspect of it, and I think you've done an amazing job from your career, and I think that you do have the capacity to learn a lot about our compliance, and I just wanted to kind of clarify a few of those things since then. So, but appreciate it, Speaker.
Okay.
Thank you,
Anybody else?
Councilor.
Councillor Austin.
Councillor Shambaugh was actually in front of me if you want to speak.
Okay.
I'll just be brief. I'll have to disagree with Councilman on his comments. I've looked at your resume, and back when we had a discussion the first time, I told you you were probably one of the most your resume was probably one of the most impressive resumes of anybody who's ever put in here what you've done and how you did it.
Thank you.
And you know, my issue with you was the voting deal.
Yes.
And it was, but that's been addressed. And I think, again, you're very qualified to do this, because I know, you know, when things come up in the Gaming Commission, and you do have to look at laws, and you do have to interpret things, I would definitely want you in that position as being an attorney to do that. I think that gives you the upper hand to do that, because that's what you do for a living.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that from speaking with you, you're very intelligent and you're in it for the right reasons, and you actually came back like you were suggested to. So I commend you for that, and that's why I'm going to support you. But I don't think that I can't agree with those comments about why you do things and why you don't. I mean, obviously you did it in the past, and you want to get back in the nation again. And I don't agree with the comments. Whether or not who you supported is immaterial. I mean, we all support who we want to support in different things. So I just don't agree with that reasoning, because you came here before even that election started, and you tried to get in. So, and you're back, and again, you're very qualified to do the job, and that's why I'm supporting you.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Robson?
Yes, it puzzles me why throughout history we've never held anybody to the qualification that the people who've been on the board that I know all the people on the board, and I've known all the people on the board for the last 10 years or so. We've never had that they had to have previous gaming experience. We have people who are lay people in the community. We have people who are from all kinds of backgrounds on there. They are a cross-section of Cherokee people who are responsible and given the task of watching after this for us. Where else and when else have we been offered somebody with a Master's of Law in Taxation from New York University? Now, I believe that shows the right kind of propensity to understand the regulation process. I am 100% comfortable with this nominee.
And you have a right to that. Yeah, Councillor Deere.
You're a Cherokee citizen, right?
Yes, sir.
Just clarify that. I'm good at blackjack. It's my gaming experience. I'm just going to go on the record. I mean, I have, that whole thing. You've heard me talk several times, community. You went to law school, you did your stuff. I like the idea that, yeah, I can play blackjack, but I'm not going to go fight laws without my attorney. I mean, so you have to have that kind of fight in you. I applaud you for coming back, because I do know people that have stated in other stuff, yeah, I'll be there. They lose the fight. Where are they? But I'm glad you come back. I like the fight in that. So I agree with some of Shambo and some of Councillor Austin are saying. I mean, you have the education. A lot of us started our jobs a long time ago, and we'd have never got a job if they would have looked at something previous, right? So I think it's great that you do that, and it's going to bring a new look, and you're going to look at things different than people that have been here 20 years. I mean, if we look back at where we were 20 years ago, some of you guys would not want to go back 20 years. So that's just my thoughts on the record. I like you came back. I wasn't here when you did it a year ago, but character has a lot to say with me.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thanks.
Councillor Coates.
Thank you. I wanted two thoughts, actually. I wanted basically to address Councillor Austin's comment of not recalling experience with gaming as having been a previous requirement to be on the Gaming Commission. I find that rather astounding. When I was previously on the council, there were a couple of people who were confirmed, and one that was recently confirmed, who are not showing any experience whatsoever. with gaming, in a regulatory or financial aspects of it, although who knows what their game is, that they may indeed be very good at. But I do know that there were a number of us who thought that that was a disqualifier and who did not vote for those individuals, even though they were ultimately confirmed. What that leaves us with is that right now on our gaming commission, I believe we have a couple of people already serving on it who don't have any appreciable experience with the regulatory financial aspects of gaming. So it concerns me. I do think that you are more qualified to get up to speed quickly because of your legal background. I don't question that at all. But I am concerned, just in a larger general picture, that about a statement that qualifications or having some kind of expertise in that particular area has not been something that we required in the past. I'm thinking, and why not? That would seem like just a baseline for anything. So that's a comment. Now my second thought is that, and I wasn't here, although certainly reading about it, the nomination to the Supreme Court. And from what I'm understanding from the conversation, that you were urged by several people, including Councilman Lay, then Councilman Lay, to pursue service in another way as a preliminary step to an ambition to the Supreme Court. Is that? And so my question is fundamentally, and that ambition is fine. I don't have any problem with that, I guess. But my question is, do you feel that you would have an interest in serving on the Gaming Commission if the Supreme Court was not the ultimate goal? In other words, in its own right, is this a position that you feel you could be interested in just as a standalone position?
Counselor, I do not view this as a stepping stone to the Supreme Court. At the time, my first introduction to the council was my nomination to the Supreme Court. So Councilor Lay at the time suggested that if my desire was to serve the Cherokee Nation, that perhaps I should start, to use the example that I should crawl before I walk or I should walk before I run. And so he thought that perhaps I should serve in another capacity first before I was promoted to the highest court that we have as one of 5 Supreme Court justices. So it is not my ambition per se by joining the Gaming Commission, if the council will approve my nomination, to then use that as a stepping stone to the Supreme Court. I don't know that I will ever be nominated again to the Supreme Court. But again, I'm very sincere in my desire to serve the Cherokee Nation, and based upon my resume and so forth, I've been asked by the chief to serve in this capacity, and I said yes. And so I'm hopeful today that you will say yes as well.
Yeah, follow up?
Sure.
So you have been studying the federal and state laws, the tribal laws that pertain to gaming.
I have.
This is what you said.
Yes, gotten some amount of framework down and have been trying to, yes.
Okay, can you share with us what it is, what you're finding that is intriguing to you about what you're learning?
Well, I mean, I am intrigued by all of it. I must say that, I think that clearly we have the compact negotiations that are going on. We have, opportunities to expand our gaming into Arkansas. I think that there are so many things as far as opportunities of growth on the horizon. I know that the gaming helps us generate a large part of our revenue, and it goes back to the councilor's earlier statements about helping our citizens and helping to provide roads and plumbing and houses and everything else. So for me, ultimately, if this is an opportunity to help us grow, help us generate more revenue, and to then reinvest that into our people, that is the most important aspect of this job for me.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Yes, Councilor Bakershaw.
Shana, I asked this last time.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you vote?
Yes, ma'am, I did. I voted in both of our races.
Thank you. And I want to extend an invitation to attend our at-large communities. We have 2 in the Tulsa area.
I would love to do so. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Anybody else?
Just one quick comment. I just want to make one quick comment, and I appreciate you letting me kind of ask some tough questions. That's just kind of who I am as a nature. You know, I have to make kind of a statement. I had a lot of citizens that believed in me to get in this position, and I had no previous legislator experience. So they believed in me, and you know, I'm glad you came here. That gives me a lot of confidence in you as a person showing back up. I know about your history coming before, and I'm really, really just excited that you showed back up. But I still had to ask a couple questions.
Thank you. I understand, sir.
Well, one thing that you did, that first, you have a very impressive resume.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
And I see a lot of potential in many aspects of the tribe that you could benefit us. And you joined the Cherokee Bar.
I did.
And you know, some people played that down, but to me, you know, that's the basic fundamental by not being part of the Cherokee Bar. They can say what they want, but I take that very serious. If you're going to be part of us and you're going to be in the legal area, join the Cherokee Bar. If it costs $10 or $5 or 10 cents, be part of us.
And I recently renewed, so I'm good for 2020.
Yes, you're good. You're good. Okay, well, yeah, and we just appreciate you coming back in other categories there.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Councilor Duncan?
I was just going to say it's disappointing to me that we can come in here and cook up these conspiracies and allege that someone committed a crime, you know, of pay to play, this and that. And I'm glad you said what you said at the end, but I just have to point that out, that we can't just make blanket statements that are serious enough of criminal allegations, you know. So.
I don't think he made a
asking questions. That's all it was. Wasn't making a statement.
Yeah. And everybody has a right to their opinion. You know, you're going to have 17 opinions in here, but we'll all come back in a democratic process. So everybody's had their fair share, and we appreciate you being here. So,
thank you, Mr.
Speaker. We had a motion and a second. We had discussion. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Councilor No Fire, would you take the one on Roberta Gibson, board member to Sequoia?
Yes, a resolution confirming the reappointment of Roberta Gibson as a board member of the Sequoia High School Board of Education. I put that in the form of a motion.
Got a motion?
Second.
Second. And Roberta is here?
Right here.
Roberta is one of the supporters of Sequoia High School and does an outstanding job. She cares for the kids. She's one of the most committed board members that we have. So, you know, here she is, and she's willing to do it again. So we appreciate that. Okay, got a question? Yes, Councilor Vasquez.
I just wanted to be added as a sponsor, please.
Okay.
So do I.
Oh, same.
Okay. Sponsors?
North Greasy. I mean,
North or south?
how can you, north?
Hey, north or south.
If she's from south, it might be a different story.
I think she's just from a good lady area. Okay, got a motion, second, all in favor? Yes, Councilor Critton.
Could you add me as a sponsor?
Sponsor, everybody. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Roberta, you have anything to say?
No, but thank you. I do enjoy coming, and I'm not too sports-minded. I am more academically oriented. So there's a lot of difference, and I really enjoy coming to the meetings and working with great people. Thank you.
Yeah, we need that. Thank you. Sports-minded anyway. Okay. All right. This is for the editorial board. Someone make a motion that we skip that and take care of all this stuff so we can come back to that. Is that all right?
Make a motion.
Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. All right. Councillor Austin, you want to take that, the next amendment there?
This is, you're talking about an act amending Title 44, Chapter 1, Section 6F of the Cherokee Nation Code, annotated relating to free and independent press for the Cherokee Nation, and I move that this be enacted. It is Increasing the compensation for the editorial board members, if I remember exactly how it works.
Yes.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the ayes have it. Councillor Jordan, you want to take the next one?
Yes, the legislative act entitled the Cherokee Nation Motor Vehicle License and Tax Code Modification of 2019. I put that in the form of a motion.
Got a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I do have a question.
Okay.
If somebody's here to speak to it. So are we saying that if a school does not provide some type of culture training, they are not going to get a share of the tax revenue? Is that what we're saying, or?
You want to answer that, Chris?
No, that's not what we're saying. So the language was added, the percentage, there were two things that are changed here. So the 5%, first of all, we took out the A through F because the state doesn't do that anymore, so we don't want to refer through to something that's not there. But the 5% was specifically dedicated to STEM, and this is to allow the 5% set aside to be used for STEM or, I guess, Cherokee language, cultural, history classes, as well as truancy programs. So just, they don't have to have any one of those, but that money can now be broken up between STEM, culture, history, truancy. And then the other one was, if, for example, a school refuses to let a student wear an eagle feather at graduation, we can withhold what would normally be their per student payment. Because the way we do this now, every school gets an amount based on the number of Cherokee students in their school. And this language was added to address those situations where we have had schools either try to make a student cut their hair or not allow them to wear eagle feather, not allow them to wear their Cherokee stole. And so that second language was added to give some discretion if we have a school that does that, and we can't take money away once we give it to them, but what we can tell them is if you don't fix this policy within your school, then next year you're not going to get this money because you're not allowing Cherokee students to exercise their cultural and religious practices.
Okay. Then I had another question. It refers to Cherokee Nation Head Start. Is that just the one here in Tahlequah, or is that going to extend to our Head Starts that are
Out in the community. I think we have, 8 or 9 locations across our jurisdiction.
So, I wanted to bring note to that because of the redlining. For whatever reason, this particular section where it addressed Head Start is on your copies actually highlighted as blue. And so we did want to make sure that we did draw attention to that and let you know that we're adding the Head Start program. So currently, based on the way this law is written, the double head count is only extended to the immersion school and Sequoia High School. Head Start had been receiving that in years past, but through interpretation of the law and review of that, we realized that we didn't actually properly cover the Head Start. And so this would include all Head Starts and based on their head count for eligible programs. It's not taking a good chunk of money away from the other schools. It will be a negligible difference that's spread across each of those schools. And on the analysis that we did, based on the payments, I think we're looking at an increase of about $30,000 that would go to the Head Start based on last year's payment. So that $30,000 spread across all the schools will be probably a couple $100 to each school. So I don't think it's going to be a major impact to each of the schools.
Okay.
So I did want to make sure that we drew attention to that because you may not have caught that in your review.
That
And it is
clarify?
all Cherokee Nation Head Starts.
Councillor Taylor, is that clarified?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Councillor Deere?
With TPS, I've called them several times to get clarification on Cherokee students in the school, and they seem to have trouble clarifying that, where the money and how many they're doing the way they have their system set up. Is there a way you could check into that and clarify how that's working with TPS?
Absolutely.
I'm on the board, so.
Yeah. So, yeah, if you can help out with that.
And what is the question?
Tulsa.
Oh, you're talking about Tulsa.
Yeah, Tulsa.
You have to say Tulsa here. We're in Tulsa.
Oh, sorry. All right, over there.
on that.
We'll definitely talk to Talala.
Tahlequah.
What is
BPS, that throws us
the
to-
question as to how they're using the money?
No, clarifying Cherokee students.
Submitting their counts.
Yeah.
Okay.
Their count, how they're submitting. So it seems to be of a general thing, but I think we need to get that clarified.
Definitely make sure we reach out to them.
Right. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, we good? Councillor Austin?
On the fourth page, the red section, third line, it says, significance of the Cherokee Nation and/or other tribes. Is there a reason why we don't say other really recognized tribes? Because tribes is real wide word.
I think that would be an appropriate friendly amendment.
Okay, I would make a friendly amendment that we insert the word federally recognized tribe in between other and tribes.
Why was that not inserted in the first place?
I wrote it and I just didn't put it in there.
We had no objection.
We included other tribes, specifically if you have a school that the student who is wanting to wear an eagle feather is Creek, but it's in our area, and the Creek Nation may not be giving them any money, but we are, and so we wanted it to be broader, more so than narrow.
Mr.
But
Speaker, let me go on record that I don't consider a non-federally recognized tribe a tribe, and so when I read tribe, that's all
I agree with Chief on that.
Obviously, my concern is that other people don't interpret it as we do.
Here in Cherokee County, we do.
And I think that's an important distinction, because we don't want someone arguing that because they are a member of the Missouri United Cherokee that they should be able to wear an eagle feather at graduation. And eagle feathers are specifically limited to members of federally recognized tribes. So I think it's a great amendment.
Very well
And I'm
put.
sorry I didn't catch that.
Okay.
I'll make it friendly for whoever needs to approve it.
Okay. Yes, Councilor Buzzard, you have a comment?
Yes, I had a question on the 5%. How did this school,
Hold
we
on,
give,
I'll
part of our compact is what,
clarify.
20% or 25% of the school?
38%.
Okay, sorry, 38%.
To education.
Then we've got the other 5%. How does the schools access this 5%? Now, is it competitive, or how do we do this?
Yeah, for lack of a better way of saying it, yes, it would be competitive. Those schools would actually have to provide documentation and show that they're actually offering the Cherokee classes, partnering with us, offering STEM classes, which we've been working with a lot of those public schools to offer those STEM classes and to help facilitate that. And then the others, the truancy, which we've been looking at some truancy issues across the 14 counties, and in particular, and having some discussions with some of our employees in Adair County of how to combat the truancy that has started to creep up on the rise again.
I think this is good. I remember years ago, we had this 5% set aside for culture stuff at school, so this looks like it's coming back to be the same way. So what happens to the other 5% that was going to education? Is they no longer getting that, or are they going to administer the 5%?
They'll administer.
Okay, they'll administer the 5%. So what that school will do is put in a request, I guess, and then we'll have a committee look at that and see how it gets distributed out.
Yes, sir.
Is that how you understand it, Chief?
Yeah, I think we still are in development of programs.
Okay.
For example, and I don't want to belabor this, but Councilman Austin and I last year, when I was Secretary of State, worked on a program. Roy Boney particularly worked on a program to help educate teachers about our culture so they can do a better job, and providing a Cherokee history book that we publish. And so that's one approach that we like. We think we should make sure we can make it.
Good. Thanks, sir.
Okay, anybody else? Councilor Taylor, do you have?
I would just like to offer to Harley's point that there are probably a lot of other funding sources available for STEM education, and probably every one of us has schools that say they would like to offer some type of culture, but there's no funding for it. And so this is a way that they can take the STEM monies that are restricted, use ours that's a little bit freer for the cultural classes. So I think it's a good thing we're doing. That's all I have.
And the tribe antes up enough funds to these schools, they should have some culture somewhere.
Anyway.
Somewhere. Okay? If
We
they're
believe,
not, then
we
they're
believe
just-
they need to help us tell our story.
Absolutely. If
And
they're
then tell
not,
it
then they
accurately.
just don't want to. Okay. Anybody else? We had a motion, we had a second, then we had a friendly. Okay? I know, I see Joe Deere, but we gotta get this taken care of first.
Yeah,
We
that's
had a
fine.
motion, we had a second, then we had a friendly. Do you accept the friendly?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Councilor Deere, let's close the remarks.
Yeah, just as a real quick we're trying to get books, those history books that we're talking about, and gift shop doesn't have them. And I've talked to Mark Vance, and they don't have them. So they've told all the people that they need to go on Amazon to try to find them. Is there a way that we can get a bulk of these books to give out? I mean, they're trying to send in stuff, but that's what we've been having to tell them. That's what their comments have been, is to get these books back.
I was going to say, the last time I had checked, we actually had them in the gift shop, and I will double check on that. And I appreciate you bringing that to our attention. We'll make sure that we get that addressed right away.
And the Cherokee, if I could add, the Cherokee 101 pilot program last year involved at least getting a book, and then we can make sure, as Chief Staff says, that they're available.
Yeah, if you can let me know, because I called the gift shop myself, and she's like, I don't know what book you're talking about.
Okay.
And I need a bunch of books right now, so.
Okay.
If you can let me know, I appreciate it.
I certainly will.
Thank you.
Okay, everybody good? Okay. Councillor Buzzard.
Just one other thing. Do we know about how much money that 5% is? It's 300,000 or 400,000 or something.
I'm going to look back to our expert on that to see if she knows off the top of her head.
I believe it used to be around between 300,000 and 400,000 on the 5%.
I think you're right, but I was hoping somebody would back me up on that.
Way back.
I would say because we do the 5% of the 20% of gross on the law enforcement, and it's like 400 or something.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that would be my percent.
Okay. Everybody good? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, ayes have it. Now we'll move back to item number, I think it was 4 there.
7.
Okay. This is the confirming nomination of editorial board. How many do we have here that were 1? That might not be too difficult to choose then. Would you come to the table here and introduce yourself? We'll give you maybe 3 minutes. Yes, Councillor Coates.
Councillor Bird, before we start, there is another nominee, Graham Brewer, who had intended to be here today. He has a newborn. And he is asking, I've been on text with him, if it would be all right for him to call in with your permission, with the council's permission, for any questions that people
I don't
may
see a
have.
problem with that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, introduce yourself. And
OCO, my name is Christy Dakwadova. I am from District 13 of the Cherokee Nation. I am really honored to be here with the opportunity to serve the Cherokee Nation on the editorial board. I grew up reading the Cherokee Phoenix at my granny's house. It served as a really good connection to the tribe for me when I was growing up in Ulaga. And the reason I chose to go into journalism, both with my degree and my career, is because I'm a storyteller. And I believe that stories are a way to connect people, and a way to motivate people, not just today and right now, but also as a way to connect people to the history. I believe that stories don't just share where we are right now, but where we've been. I've went to Oral Roberts University, where I earned my Bachelor of Science in Media with my concentration in convergence journalism and a minor in business. While there, I served as the editor-in-chief of the student newspaper called The Oracle, where we earned the Sequoia Award at the Oklahoma Collegiate Media Association. I was also the founder of the university's first Native American Student Association, where I took a group of diverse Native students to Onashie for the first time. I went on to get my master's from the University of Oklahoma. I have worked in journalism and communications in some capacity for the last 7 years. In that time, I have written over 700 articles that have been in print. I worked for the Claremore Daily Progress as a government and education reporter. I worked for the Edmond Sun and Non-Doc. I am now the marketing director at Mental Health Association Oklahoma. I'm a professor at ORU. I work in their communication and media department, as well as in their School of Business. I'm really excited to be here. This is actually the first year I haven't worked as a reporter in any capacity, so I was really excited when Keith Austin approached me with this opportunity, because I believe in newspaper and I believe in its critical role, not just in our tribe, but in the larger narrative that is important to Native peoples. I can bring experience in social media management, as well as experience in web development, in podcast production, and of course your traditional written journalism in its current form, which includes photography and video and print. So I'm open to any questions that you may have about my experience or background.
Very good resume. Anybody have any questions?
Yes.
Councillor Merrick Shaw.
Yes, Christy, it was a nice phone call you made, by the way.
Thank you.
Do you belong to the Native American Journalists Association?
I do not. I am currently not serving as a reporter. I'm in a marketing position at the moment, and I have not reached out for that particular role because I don't know if my role in the communications would count towards the journalistic focus of that group.
Have you checked, so you haven't checked it out to see if
It's open to marketing professionals? Yeah. I haven't, but I will.
And in your present position, you're really not using your journalism, is that correct?
Oh, no, I do, every day. We produce a podcast called the Mental Health Download. I interact with reporters across the state regarding mental health topics that are important. I write press releases that I send out to various news organizations. I do video. I was in Oklahoma City. When we talked, I was actually driving out there to cover some stories for the news outlets in OKC. So definitely still active.
Now, the Mental Health Association, your office is located where?
Legacy Plaza, which is in Tulsa. 31st and Yale.
What social events? Are you responsible for any of their social events?
I am. Every year I am responsible for helping organize the Zero Mental Health Symposium, which is an event attended by about between 800 and 1,000 mental health professionals in the region. This year was called Rethink Mental Health. Next year, we're going to be looking at historical trauma. So we're bringing in native speakers to talk about that topic. So that's a very large event. There's a team about 8 of us, and I'm one of those 8 that's responsible for the organization and execution of it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good?
I'm going to ask the chair.
Yes. Councillor Robson.
Yes, Ms. Sturgill.
Yes.
Would you share briefly, as a youth, your experience in competing for...
Oh, yes. Yeah. I competed for Miss Cherokee in 2011. The winner that year was Christy Kingfisher. You might know her. She's went on to medical school. But I had a mentor who helped me both with Cherokee. I learned to make my dress. I make and play the Cherokee flute, the river cane flute. So, yeah, it was a great experience.
Thank you. I just wanted you to know if her connection is not recent.
Yeah, I've been around for a while.
Councillor No Fire, do you have a comment?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Councillor Dobbins?
You did your undergrad at ORU?
Yes.
You're at ORU now?
Yes.
Just kind of summarize the effect ORU had on your person, your career.
Yeah, I attended ORU as a whole person scholar, which is a scholarship that they give to 20 individuals every year. And it's their equivalent of like a full ride scholarship. And while there, I interacted with a lot of phenomenal professors who helped me develop my media experience. And I went from there right into OU and then back to teaching there. So I find it to be a good university that's definitely equipped me for not just this role, but all the roles I've had.
Sure. Yes, anybody else? I have one question.
Sure.
How does it feel to be a Cherokee these days?
How's it feel to be a Cherokee these days?
Yes.
There are both challenges and there are some days I wake up and I'm like, man, I feel so lucky to be Cherokee. And then there's moments where I feel responsible, even if I feel out of my element, to share what our culture means, especially at ORU, where there's 2 Cherokees in the entire university. And so sometimes you have to push back and explain what it means to be Cherokee to people who don't know what it means. And so that can be challenging, but also exciting, especially if they walk away knowing something new that they didn't know. I definitely feel privileged to be a Cherokee.
Good answer. Okay. Yeah, I feel the same way. Okay. Councillor Coates, are we going to, is this person going to call in? Or we can go drop back to number 7 till they're coming on board?
I just texted him to call, so if we can give him 10, 15
We're
seconds.
going to do the last resolution there. Councillor Vasquez, did you take that?
Sure. This is a resolution authorizing the Cherokee Nation to incur indebtedness and authorizing the approval of a lease purchase agreement and limited waiver of sovereignty immunity to Oklahoma State Bank. And I put this in the form of a motion.
Have a motion? Second. Second. Any discussion? Yes, Trey, you want to just briefly give us a narrative of this?
I'll let Chad do it. It's for the landfill equipment. And
yeah, I think I can
he's
give
calling in.
a brief understanding and justification for kind of what we're doing here. So,
Okay.
we've operated a landfill in Adair County since I believe it was 1982. Over the years, the landfill has existed in various levels of independence, and at one point in time, it was operated under the business entity. Subsequent to that, it was operated as an independent, tribally owned LLC, and shortly after, the previous Principal Chief, Bill John Baker, appointed the first Secretary of Natural Resources. He pulled the landfill over underneath that department to kind of bring some more formalized operations and stability in the budget. And so since that time, there's been a lot of improvements made out there, standardization of operations, and a new cell construction. Currently, where we're at now is we operate 4 primary pieces of heavy equipment, one piece being a bulldozer, one piece being a haul truck, articulated haul truck, whatever articulated means, one piece being excavator, and the other being a trash compactor. Those 4 pieces of equipment have a useful life of about 5 years, and we purchased those through a previous lease purchase agreement with Welch State Bank about 6 years ago. And so throughout the life of this landfill, we've had routine replacement of these 4 primary pieces of equipment. And we are now at a place where we are replacing the equipment that has exceeded, for most part, its mechanical limits. And so that's what this resolution aims to do, is to replace those 4 pieces of equipment with new Caterpillar equipment, with the exception of the dozer being a rebuild from the frame up, in order to obtain a factory incentive that makes it more economically feasible to rebuild than purchase. And so this is a routine equipment rotation that we have done in the past. I think the last amount that we had spent was about $1.5 million back in 2014. This is going to be the exact amount, roughly $1,881,050.
Okay.
Also included within that purchase is a 5-year warranty for all pieces of equipment and a 4-year comprehensive service agreement that every certain interval, I believe 500 hours, they come out, clean it up, replace fluids, normal routine maintenance. And the reason why we included that in the purchase price was to stabilize some of our maintenance costs, because after this equipment gets older, it can get quite expensive to maintain it. In the last year, we've spent several $100,000 maintaining equipment that getting to the end of its useful life. So,
are we carrying over any balance?
There's going to be a slight balance of about $350,000.
It's not a carryover. We're leaving that on the current line that it's on with Welch, and this will be a new line for the equipment we're going to purchase with Oklahoma State Bank.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is the last loan or lease purchase agreement that they had with Welch State Bank was amortized on a 7-year note. I think the useful life of this equipment that works in heavy conditions in a landfill is about 5 years. And so there's a little bit of about maybe a year and a half of carryover, not carryover, but a year and a half of additional payments to be made that the equipment just doesn't operate. So the current note that we have is going to be 5 years, which is right about the time where, we would anticipate the useful life of the equipment to.
If there's any hours left on this heavy equipment, what will we do with that?
So there's two pieces of this equipment are non-functioning and it's economically infeasible to repair it. So that equipment will probably be either scrapped or surplused in the normal way that we handle that here at the Nation. The two other pieces of equipment are semi-functioning, and I think that where we're at the moment is we're going to hold on to that equipment and use it for redundancy in case we have equipment failures down the road.
Okay.
I think the question that we're still trying to answer on that particular issue is what the maintenance cost would be to do that. And if the maintenance cost doesn't justify keeping that equipment, then we would probably have an opportunity to sell it for it does have value, just very little. So
Okay.
we would look at getting appraisals and getting rid of that equipment if it doesn't make financial sense.
Okay. Any more discussion? Councillor Boson?
Just real quick, Chad, is this the equipment you're going to be looking at the purchase, I take it this is going to be a competitive bid?
So it is. The way that we did this, so that there's only a handful of businesses that deal in this level of high-end equipment. And for Caterpillar, which is the equipment we've decided to purchase, it's the regional sales is through Warren Cat. And so in this particular case, we reached out to them, asked, told them, we have a government operation here, and due to the size of this purchase, they went to Corporate Cat to make sure they could get, the sharpest quote that they could. We also reached out to 3 other vendors that deal with John Deere, that deal with Volvo, and we landed with the Caterpillar equipment from Warren Cat because it was the most comprehensive in terms of service agreement and warranty, but also it was the cheapest. Well, it was very close to being the cheapest. And we also reached out to our engineering firm that gives us guidance on how we operate some of our landfill operations, and they suggested that Warren Cat would be, or not Warren Cat, but Caterpillar brand would be the most sensible due to the ease with which you can find replacement parts and reliability of the equipment. So we did reach out to quite a few groups.
And the reason I bring this up, I was at a seminar and there were some people there that were Indian-owned firms and they were Terrell certified and they dealt with heavy equipment, and I don't know if they were talking about this or not, but it's happened a year or so ago. They said they put in a bid, and the way I remember when I used to deal with the specifications on heavy equipment, you specify what you want and you send it out for a bid. If Caterpillar can meet that bid, or Toro can meet it, or any equipment company comes down and they're the low bidder, that's who you have to look at.
Right.
Especially if they're Taro. Mm-hmm. Keep in mind that we got Taro, and if we're going to use Taro, let's follow the law. But anyway, I just want to make you aware of it. I've had people that call me that, and I'm sure other council members have, they've been on the Taro list for years and never got a bid. And now this heavy equipment stuff comes up, and they tell me that they're Terrell certified. But you make good points of what you just said, because I know when you're operating a company, you look at the best deal for you. So I understand where you're coming from, but keep in mind we have Indian-owned firms, Cherokee Indian-owned firms that are in this business too. So just want to bring it out and make you aware of it.
And I think this process was more hands-on than what we normally would have with putting it out, or, a request for proposals, because of the necessity and speed with which we need to resolve some of our mechanical deficiencies. And I think the amount of effort and work that we put into to identify the best possible source for this equipment, considering there's very limited sources, I think it was exceptional and perhaps better than what we would have in a bid process. And I would point out that Oklahoma State Bank, who we are utilizing for the lease purchase financing, is the only Terrell certified lending institution that we have.
And the other thing, what I was getting at, is the Terrell institution that sells this equipment. That's where I was coming from, not so much the bank, but the heavy equipment people. That's who talked to me about it. And so I just want to make you aware of it. If we're putting out stuff for bid, then I think we certainly need to consider the Terrell contractor, and especially if you're Cherokee or in a known firm. So just be aware of that, because people, I don't know if the other council member gets talked to or gets called about it, but I get several calls about being a Terrell certified contractor and never get contracted. But just be careful, and I understand where you're coming from as far as what meets your needs. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, Councillor Deere.
Harley, I get what you're saying on the Taro thing. I had extent conversation with Chad on the equipment because of the amount. What he's referring to, because I've purchased this equipment personally, there's really not a lot of vendors that do this type, that are purchasing this type of equipment, because it's, I mean, you're talking Volvo, they're nationally, international, Cat, Yellowstone, these guys, they're not going to be a Taro vendor, they're going to be nationally owned. And what I talked to him about was these other pieces of equipment he's talking about, these D6s and stuff that are completely dead. If you throw them into maintenance, it's like a boat. You can just throw money at it and throw money at it. And at some point, like he's talking about, you have to just buy a new piece of equipment. And in my dealings, Cat, if you're talking about a person, most companies, like my company, we have our in-house maintenance guy. Cat makes it real easy to go buy these parts. We're talking about tracks and stuff like that. They're real easy to get. There's some companies that have other equipment. You can't just pop off a track. You got to have the right rod, you got to have the right tool, and you have to have all this stuff. It's set up so you have to take it in. Cat is competitive with Yellow House and these guys, John Deere, but if you're talking about dozers and big excavators, Cat's a pretty good company to go with. When he's talking about the financial part, it is easier to go through the bank because the interest rates are higher when you're dealing with Volvo or Cat and their private firms. They'll say yes to anything, but who wouldn't say yes at a 20% interest rate compared to a bank, and you're talking about 7 to 10 years. So financially, as a business guy, talking with him, he's gone about it the right way, especially the equipment that he's trying to get. I mean, it's not little equipment like a lawnmower we're going to put outside. This is big equipment. You got to know what you're doing. And with the maintenance agreement on the end, the guys literally will bring their fuel trucks, their maintenance, chain the oil on site, compared to us having to call somebody out, which I think it's like 75 to 125 now for a guy to call from Volvo to come on site, just for him to come there, not even look at anything, just for you to call him to come. But with that maintenance agreement, they automatically are on task on the computer. They just ask you where you're at, and they come out and they fix it. So to keep that going, that's going to give you the longevity of that equipment, which would, in turn, would be a good business decision for Cherokee Nation to purchase it the way he's doing it. So that was just my, you can call it a comment or input, whatever you call it. But that's all I had. Thank you.
Anybody else? Councillor Taylor?
I have some questions. A few years ago, we had a plan to close the landfill. Are we still working towards that end?
So we're in the process of putting together a master plan. So we've recently, in the last two and a half weeks, received notification that we've been selected for a grant in the amount of $150,000 for that purpose. And within the next month, we anticipate putting out a request for proposal for an engineering firm to take a look at everything that we have at the landfill in terms of regulatory compliance, financials, operational, expansion, all of the various factors that we can pull together and put various scenarios of what closure would look like and what it's going to cost and how we would do it. And I think that the plan is going to be very comprehensive, and it's going to guide some of the decision making, obviously, that this body would have to look at to decide what closure looks like and when we're going to do it. And it'll also let us have a better understanding of what that would cost. We do currently have, I believe, about $3.5 million set aside in a closure fund, but I don't know that that's enough to close at the moment. It depends on what that time frame looks like, and we are working towards that goal. I mean, that's the goal of every landfill, is to work towards closure. And having that information and some of those questions answered will certainly help guide that decision making, and I anticipate having that within the next 8 months. So.
Okay. And do we anticipate the landfill will be able to make these payments?
I think that, you know, it's gonna
Trey's saying yes,
So,
and Chad's not committing.
So I think that the maintenance costs over the last year, I looked at the maintenance costs that we're paying on this equipment over the last year, and since this equipment has a maintenance agreement on it, I think that the amount that we've paid in the last year is going to go a long way to that debt service on this equipment. And I had the same question that you did about the closure. And what I don't think you mentioned was that it probably will not. We won't have a plan to close within 5 years, so we will need this equipment for the 5-year life of the equipment. So.
Yeah, and I think you could close it at any time, but the time that you close it is going to be determined by how much money you have saved to do the job. Because the moment you stop operating a sanitary landfill, you have very serious deadlines that are triggered to maintain compliance. So.
That's all I have.
We just wanted a plan to look at closing it.
Right.
Sarah Hill's the very first person that's ever presented that. Said we're going to work on a plan to close the landfill.
Right.
That would make Adair County really, really happy. Just a plan. We don't want a time when you're going to close. We just want a plan.
Right, and we should have a very comprehensive analysis of that. And I think Sarah, in her time as Secretary of Natural Resources, really implemented a lot of changes to formalize those operations, which was the whole idea of reorganizing it underneath her department. And so it's came a long way, and this is the next step for us, is to formalize that plan, and we'll have that ready within hopefully the next 8 months.
The good news is we're paying for it with a grant.
Even better.
Yeah. All right, anybody else? Dora, did you, Councilor?
Yes. Did you have a term sheet for this loan yet? And what interest rate did you end up with?
It's not a full-blown term sheet yet. The interest rate that we have is 2.9%, which is good comparative to the market right now. It's not as good as the interest rate we had on the last, but there's nowhere that we're going to get that interest rate again, which is why we decided, instead of rolling these together, the 350 that's left on the existing equipment, we left that there because it had such a better interest rate. And we're going to do this, and 2.9 is a really good rate. 5 years. I mean, there's some light stuff here. The Oklahoma State Bank is a Taro certified bank, as he mentioned. They are going to require a waiver of sovereign immunity as to the equipment for collateral. You know, if they're going to lend us the money, they want collateral for it. And, you know, that's the general right now. I think you said you might have gotten one.
So this term
Just
sheet
the
is
other day.
as to the financial aspects of the deal, and unfortunately, I wasn't able to get the actual draft loan agreement in the packet, but I have circulated it here today, and that document identifies the fundamental terms for the arrangement, and including the limited waiver of sovereign immunity, which will require, and this only applies in the event that we decline or we fail to pay them. And it will require arbitration, and that arbitration would be enforceable in a federal court. And that's typical of the loan agreements that we've brought across before. And that document is near final. There will be some slight changes to incorporate specifics of the equipment and maybe some cleanup. And I just recently got that, so I will circulate before this goes to full council the actual document that we will execute, which will be substantially in that same form.
Okay. Councilor Shambaugh?
As far as payment goes, we had a small conversation about this, but this, I guess you have to ask yourself, this is a doable thing. I mean, we can afford to do this. I mean, first of all, we know that, I mean, if this is a running landfill, that we have to have these things to operate on a daily basis. And one of the toughest things I know, even in a smaller sense, is your fleet management. Now, because whenever your cars or your equipment starts costing more to maintain it than they're worth, I mean, that is a money pit, and that's what I've run into in the past at my place. So I know how important that is to keep your things running. But also, we have to, if this is a running landfill, we have to have that equipment anyway. But I guess my biggest question would be, I mean, we can afford it, right? I mean, we've looked at this, and this is something we can afford to do, and part of it, I guess, will be paid by the landfill, possibly?
Yes, the nation has the money to do it. So the landfill doesn't make money anyway. What we will do is we'll pay, we'll come out of the gen fund, and then the depreciation expense will hit the landfill budget. So yes, as a nation, we can afford to do it, yes. And
well, that's You know, I know that might seem like a silly question, but that's kind of a big deal too.
No, that was the first one I asked, so.
And the landfill does generate revenue that it uses to offset its financial obligations and overhead. It just doesn't, doesn't receive as much as we would like it to.
And I think whatever you like or don't like, at some point in time, gosh dang, those things, if you don't replace things at intervals, it seems like everything comes due all at once, And if this is going to be a long-term deal with our landfill, then it's not going to be shut down in time. That may be something that we may have to look at too, is a partial, replace 2 pieces of equipment.
Oh, yeah, break it up.
So everything doesn't just break down at the same time, and you don't have to have that giant, payment. So that just in the future.
And that's an element that will be addressed in the master plan,
All right,
the
thank
equipment
you.
rotation.
Okay, have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed? Comment, Councilor Crittenden?
Well, I was just gonna say, since it's in our backyard, some might be expecting a comment. The only thing I think about, it's a necessary evil, for lack of a better term. We have to have it.
That's correct.
That's the way, it's in my district, and we could talk all day about the landfill. There's some sides to it, talking about the folks. There's beliefs about this and that about it, but just for the record, since it sits right there in my backyard, that's how I'm looking at it. It's just, that's high dollar stuff, but it's the way it is, and it's a necessary cost, if anybody was wondering my 2 cents. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to get back up to the editorial board. Let's see if we can't connect with our gentleman here.
He
Councilor.
is on the line.
Okay, state your name, sir.
Hi, my name's Graham Brewer.
Graham Brewer, okay. You have the council members here before you in committee, so state your name and give us a little bit of your background.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. I'm so sorry that I couldn't end up being there in person. I live in Norman. I had planned on coming, but wasn't able to make it after all. But yeah, I'm a reporter at High Country News. I write on the Indigenous Affairs desk. And before that, I was a reporter at the Oklahoman newspaper for about 4 years, where I covered the state government and the criminal justice system. But I've also been a board member at the Native American Journalists Association. I'm going on my 3rd year now. And it's a program that really helped me a lot when I was a student. Growing up in Norman and going to the university, it was really nice to be a part of that family and work with other Indigenous reporters and learn from them and get to really understand Indian country. And now I feel really lucky to work at one of the very, very few national publications that pays writers full-time to just cover Indian country. And I've long been a reader and a supporter of the Cherokee Phoenix. It's a paper that my mom has been reading ever since I can remember, and such an important part of our history as a tribe, as you all know. And so it's a really great honor just to be nominated and to be here speaking with you today. And I really feel like just through my experience, not only as a journalist, but as someone who sat on the different journalism boards for different nonprofit organizations, someone who could bring some expertise to the table that I would be happy to share. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you all may have for me.
Any questions for Graham? Councilor Copes?
Yes. Hi, Graham. It's good to hear your voice. It's good to meet you again, even if over the phone. I was very impressed with you when we met last spring, and I wanted to say that I was very touched by the cover letter that you wrote for us. I wondered if you could share a little bit with us about your understanding of the significance of the Cherokee Phoenix, and as you say, you have an understanding of what a member of an editorial board does. Can you share with us some about how you understand the Phoenix in the context of its history, and what you feel that you would bring in terms of its vision and direction for the future?
Well, one of the things I do as a board member at the Native American Journalists Association is I train newsrooms how to cover Indian country ethically and responsibly. As I'm sure you're all aware, national media does a very poor job covering indigenous communities. They typically parachute in during tragedy and leave. And so I do a lot of outreach with newspapers and try to train the reporters to be more thoughtful and nuanced when they write about tribal communities. And when I did this training for the New York Times earlier this year, one of the things that I really enjoyed getting to say to that group of reporters was that we as a tribe have been doing newspaper journalism longer than you have, a quarter of a century longer than the New York Times and half a century longer than the Washington Post. The paper, I think often, like I said in my letter, I think often of that word protection over the Phoenix on the original masthead and what that must have meant during not only pre-removal but removal times and the years that followed, where it was a very, very difficult time for our people. And I think that that the newspaper and its long history has real purpose, and it gives me a lot of pride to know that Phoenix is one of the very few tribal papers in the country that adheres to free press laws, which I think are very, very important in Indian country. And I love to think that our tribal members can look at a paper like the Phoenix and trust that it will hold leaders accountable, as well as tell them the stories of their people's accomplishments. And so I think, those two things are very important, and I like to think of the Phoenix as kind of a gold standard when it comes to tribal papers, not just because of our history, but because of the editorial content that it produces. And in terms of being a board member, I've gotten to work with some really incredible people who taught me a lot about the potential of what a good board can do. And I think if I can be candid, when I was working at the Oklahoma newspaper, there were times when I really saw the potentials of what a board shouldn't do. And so I think those two experiences have given me a pretty well-rounded idea of the responsibilities and the process of being a board member, not just for a nonprofit, but in an editorial sense too.
Thank you.
Anybody have any questions for Graham? Yes, Councillor Baker Shaw.
Hi, Graham. Graham, I'm Mary Baker Shaw, and I have a question. I saw where your master's is in professional writing. Could you tell us what your master's thesis possibly was? And also, I see where you're a member on the board for the Native American Journalists Association. How long have you been affiliated with the Native American Journalists Association and on that board?
So, for my master's degree, I went through the College of Journalism, but I actually wrote a book, and it was about, I had to write a couple, and one of them was a piece of fiction, and then one of them was a book about the Flaming Lips. I fancied myself a bit of a music journalist when I was in college, and for a number of years before I did more serious work. Yeah, so it didn't really have much to do with what I do now, other than teaching me how to write something that long and time intensive. I've been involved with NAJA ever since I was in college. They gave me a lot of opportunities that I really don't think I would be where I am today if it wasn't for NAJA. Through that organization, I was able to do reporting fellowships at the United Nations in New York and travel to conferences all over the country. And I, got training from producers at NPR. I worked with Charlotte Bear, and got to do some really amazing reporting in the Southwest. And so whenever I was finished with grad school and I started working professionally, I really wanted to come back and run for the NAJA board and try to do as much as I could to give back. And every year that I'm available, I always go to the conference and mentor a student journalist, just like I was able to do when I was a student, because that was such a transformative experience for me. And so, I'm in my third year as a board member, and at the end of this year, I'll run again for a second term.
Thank you for that answer.
Good. Anybody else? Okay, is that good? We have quite an impressive resume here, so we'll turn it over to the committee and we'll go from there. But regardless of the outcome, either one of you have been very well qualified. Stay involved with the tribe and look for other places that you might be able to assist us in, because both resumes to me are very impressive in what we have seen here today. So with that, thank you, Graham, and we can disconnect if you want, and then we'll have a motion and we'll go from there. Is that all right, committee?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Councilor Coates.
We've actually got 4 candidates here, right, and 2 that have not been heard from, and I wanted to just inquire about the process of voting, because to me, the process of voting on people individually, one by one, is kind of a strange process. I was wondering if we can do this as, as a ballot, rather than what we do sometimes where we vote up or down on one and then we go to the next one and vote up or down, which is kind of, I don't comprehend that style of voting. To me, it seems like we should just vote. We've got 4 candidates and each of us votes for one of them and then we count the vote, which is just a normal vote. So I don't know what the intent was.
I don't know if we have ballots ready, do it? Is, we've never done it.
Right here. I'm just kidding. Heck yeah.
I mean, really, we could, if just pieces of paper could be handed out, we could just write a name on it,
Take 4 names and you vote for one and turn it in and they count. Okay. Yes, Councillor Robson.
All the editorial board members that I'm aware of, which I was once part of and I was voted on through this process, stood individually for an up or down vote. I don't mind welcoming new ideas. It just, we need to go into things with either this is how it's done or that's how it's done, and we're changing the rules in the middle of the game because we have a precedent.
So you're saying the Cherokee should stay constant on their decision making?
We should go with the precedent that we've had in the past regarding this. It's worked.
Somebody nominated.
All right, any more other comments other than?
Mayor?
Yes, Ms. A.G., let's hear what you got to say.
Well, on your agenda, you have a resolution confirming the nomination of blank as an editorial board member.
Okay.
You have to nominate someone. Now, however you all get to the name being put forward, I think is up to you. If you want to do a ballot, if you want to do a poll, a show of hands, but you have on your agenda a resolution that has to have a name put in it. And then there has to be a vote taken on that resolution and that name.
Okay.
But how you guys get to that is...
Okay, I think I've got it figured out. We had 2 speak today. Shelley, would you name the other 2?
The other 2 are Suzette Brewer and Jason Terrell.
Okay. Okay, Suzette Brewer.
And Jason Terrell. All 4 resumes are in your book behind the resolution.
Okay. That way, we've got a resolution with a blank. So at this time, I want to entertain a motion. Councillor Robson.
I make a motion to nominate Christy Sturgill as editorial board member of the Cherokee Phoenix.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Okay. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Raise your hand, the ones that are opposed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What do we got?
16 here, so
But there are 2 more votes to vote on.
No?
3 more. No,
This
it's
is,
not.
you got a majority on this one here.
Do we?
It's 10 to 6.
Did they count them?
Yeah.
We've got 16 here.
We can do the other if you want, but I think you got a majority on this.
So,
Legal? Are we good on that?
so what was the vote? The vote was 10 to 6?
Yes.
And no one to take a second vote, so we're gonna have people voting opposite? Is that what the?
Well, no, this is good, right? I'm asking a 10 to 6,
10 to 6 would be the majority unless somebody's gonna change their vote.
okay. All right, 10 to 6, it's good.
Oh, should no one would have voted on the other 2.
Okay, 10 to 6, you got anything to say? That's, congratulations.
Thank you all for letting me be here. I hope to serve you all very well in this role on the editorial board. I know the decision was really hard to do, so thanks.
Okay, all right. Old business, none pending, we've got announcements. Councillor Dobbins.
We're going to have a work group on the election reform, the initial meeting on November the 12th at 10. Send out a formal invite. The reason that's on council meeting day at 11:30 that day. I think we've been invited to Head Start Thanksgiving, so that's why we're going to meet November the 12th at 10. It'll be in the Tribal Services Conference Room. It's down by Lisa Trice Turtle's office, that conference room there.
It's the same day as our.
And our,
Go ahead, go ahead.
our attorneys is beginning to reach out to the Election Commission and our AG's office. We're going to be writing the legislation, but we're going to try to get their proposed amendments as well as a starting point as well. But all 17 of us will have ample opportunity to have substantive input. So 8 of us are in this work group, and then, but any of you 8 that will not be there, you might let Tim know, and then we can reach out to those others that might want to serve as well. But there will be open dialogue between other committee members that are not on the work group. But
Okay.
November 12th to 10th.
Are we close to having the recommendations from Attorney General's office?
I can tell you that we are diligently working on them, and there's a lot, so
Okay,
we will get I don't know if we'll be done by then, but we will get you what
Sure.
we've done to that point. And just for all of council's knowledge, we've had issues over the years and recommended changes over the years, and as you all know, there was something sent to council 2 years ago, I think, with some recommendations, but we have been working on specifically some issues that came up in the last election, independent expenditures, expenditures on behalf of candidates, absentee ballot issues, and of course, we know that these are all simply recommendations and that council will
Sure.
have the final say, but we did all the investigations and had to look into those things, so these are, based on what we've seen from that side, cleaning up hearing procedures because of legal questions that came up during that, so there's a lot, and we will get you, again, I don't know if that will be kind of our finished project, or product, but we will get you something prior to that meeting.
well, we're in the early stages of getting those recommendations, and Election Commission as well. Yes, Harvey?
Mr. Speaker and Council, you may remember that the Commission ordinarily makes recommendations for amendments after each election of things that come up that they think should be addressed. You may remember that the last election, the Council was not able to address the recommendations, so we didn't have any changes after the election before this last one. And so the Commission had made previous recommendations on the election before this one. And then they addressed those, but also there were new things that came up in this last election. So there's actually kind of two sets of recommendations, one that arose from the previous election and one that arose from this last election. All of them are in the document that the commission has reviewed, approved, and sent to the council and the AG.
Okay.
And as the administrator said, I think the council for the attorney for the council has not had an opportunity to review that yet, but we're getting him a copy of that today.
Okay, all right. As long as we're all working towards the same resolution, that's good.
And we're ready and willing any time that we want to get together with the council for the council or the AG or all of us and discuss any changes or compromise or amendments we want to make.
Okay.
The commission is ready to address that.
Thank you, Harvey. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, everybody. Okay, need a motion to adjourn?
Just need one quick announcement, then, Joe, if you don't mind,
Yes,
real
Councilor,
quick.
no
I
problem.
just had a young gentleman walk in, Chase Jones back there. Can you stand up? He is a junior PGA nationalist. He went and competed last month. He was able to get with Deputy down there and meet Deputy, and Chief gave him a Youth Achievement Award. And I just wanted to bring him down here and introduce him to the council, just to recognize him for his accomplishments. He finished 6th overall. Wow. So he will challenge anybody in this room to a golf match. So, Chase, we appreciate you, everything that you did. I think Deputy maybe...
I got him on the next tarot tournament.
On your team, right?
So
Congratulations. So what school do you go to? Keys, what grade? 6. What's your favorite subject? Math. And who's your favorite golfer?
Right.
Hey, he's homeboy, all right.
Go Bucks.
Yeah, got they. Okay. Councilor Crittenden.
Yeah, just 7 and 8 district. Everybody's invited. Going to have a group community meeting November 14th, 6 o'clock. Stillwell High School cafeteria.
Okay.
Nino Canaan's going to put on a shindig.
November 14th also?
Yes, sir. If I might, just wanted to invite, we had a placeholder in your calendars, but I wanted to make sure that you knew on November the 14th at 11 o'clock, we will have the grand opening of the new outpatient health center on Hastings campus. So November 14th as well.
10 minutes.
Okay. All right, with that, we need to give the lady here some time. Councillor Robson, can I adjourn, and you can make your...
Sure.
Okay. Motion to adjourn?
Make motion to adjourn. 3:15 for
Okay,
email.
3:15. All right.